Usually when you sit down to play a board game, there's this basic expectation of a shared reality. You open the box, you pull out the rule book, and everyone at the table agrees on the parameters. Like, a knight moves like a knight, no matter who happens to be sitting across from you.
Right, it's clean, predictable.
Exactly, it's clean. But when you step into the world of global digital money, that single rule book it completely vanishes. You find yourself looking at this massive geopolitical chessboard where you're playing on 3 different boards at once. And the pieces literally change shape depending on whose side of the table you're sitting on.
It is the absolute definition of a regulatory free-for-all. I mean, it really is. And if you are trying to understand the future of global finance, you have to realize that stablecoins they're no longer just these niche financial tech instruments. That era is over.
Yeah, way over.
These digital assets have evolved into actual geopolitical assets. They're strategic tools now, and they are basically the active battleground for global monetary power.
Okay, let's unpack this, because for a really long time, the narrative was that regulation is just this boring side story about compliance, just lawyers arguing over paperwork in back rooms.
Right, checking boxes.
Yeah, exactly. Oh. But looking at our stack of sources for today's deep dive, specifically these amazing notes, and a script from a series called The Stablecoin Wars, regulation isn't the side story anymore. It is the main event.
Oh, absolutely.
So today we are decoding that global chessboard of stablecoins for you. We're going to be analyzing 3 distinct regional philosophies: Europe, the US, and Asia.
Right.
Because they're all basically racing to control the rails of digital money.
Which means we really need to look at how every single one of those regions is playing a completely different game to shape how these assets function. I mean, they aren't just writing laws. They are quite literally encoding their own economic philosophies into the architecture of the internet.
Yeah. And since we've established that the whole world is in this race for regulatory control, it probably makes sense to start with the region that just built the biggest, thickest fortress. Europe, exactly. We're crossing over to Europe. They are the first to really put all their cards on the table with this comprehensive, continent-wide crypto framework. It's called MiCA. That's the Markets and Crypto Assets Regulation.
It is a monumental piece of legislation. I mean, MiCA is the first framework of its kind attempting to cover an entire continent with just one single set of unified rules. Because prior to this, if you wanted to launch a digital asset in Europe, you had to navigate the individual financial authorities of France, and then Germany, and then Italy.
Sounds like a nightmare.
Oh, totally. You'd be dealing with completely conflicting definitions at every single border crossing. But MiCA overwrites all of that.
And reading through the specific classifications they've created in these sources, it's really clear they're trying to eradicate any gray areas. They introduce these heavy-duty categorizations. You have CASPs, which are crypto asset service providers, basically, the exchanges and wallets.
Right.
But where it gets really granular is how they classify the stablecoins themselves.
Yeah.
They divide them into EMTs and ARTs.
Yeah, and the distinction between an EMT, which is an e-money token, and an ART, an asset reference token, is actually the entire core of Europe's risk management strategy here.
Okay, break that down first.
Sure, so an e-money token is pegged to a single fiat currency. Think of a digital euro or a digital dollar. Its value is entirely derived from that one traditional currency. An asset reference token, however, might be backed by a basket of different assets. So maybe a mix of fiat currencies, commodities like gold, or even, other crypto assets.
Right, so they treat them differently because the risk profiles are entirely different.
Yeah.
I mean, if you have an RT pegged to some volatile basket of commodities, the chances of it losing its peg during a market crash are just way higher than a simple digital euro backed one-to-one by cash sitting in a vault.
Precisely. And MiCA imposes entirely different capital requirements and auditing standards based on those exact risk profiles. And across the board, it mandates incredibly strict reserves. Like, if you issue a stablecoin under MiCA, you cannot just take user funds and invest them in risky high-yield corporate debt to make a quick profit.
Wow, so no gambling with the deposits.
Exactly, no gambling. You have to hold highly liquid, segregated assets. So if there is a massive market panic and every single user wants to cash out their stablecoins on the exact same day, the issuer actually has the immediate liquidity to honor that.
It prevents a digital bank run.
Exactly.
It's funny, the early crypto ethos was all about bypassing traditional gatekeepers, but MiCA acts more like the FDA for digital assets. Before you can sell your pharmaceutical to the public, you have to rigorously prove its chemical makeup, its safety profile, past clinical trials.
That's a really good analogy.
Yeah, MiCA is basically saying you can't sell your digital money to European citizens unless you prove exactly what is in your reserves, and you have to guarantee redemption rights for the holder.
What's fascinating here is that the message to the global market is super rigid, but it's clear. It's basically, if you want access to the European market, you play by our rules, or you are shut out completely.
See, you would think all these heavy-handed rules, like the massive capital requirements and the constant auditing, would just scare developers away. I mean, the compliance costs alone are staggering.
Whoa, they're huge.
Right. But looking at the market reaction in our sources, institutions are practically lining up around the block to get inside the European market. It's like this incredibly strict bouncer at an exclusive club, but everyone still wants in.
Well, because for massive financial institutions, clarity is oxygen. A global asset manager holding trillions of dollars, they cannot operate in a legal gray area. They can model for strict rules, They can pay the cost of rigorous compliance.
Yeah, they have the budget for that.
Exactly. What they cannot model for is uncertain rules. Like the existential risk of waking up one morning and finding out your entire digital asset division is suddenly illegal because a regulator just, changed their mind. MiCA removes that risk entirely. It tells institutions exactly where the boundaries are.
Which paradoxically gives them the freedom to actually build massive infrastructure within those walls. Okay, so Europe is providing the structure. They are the architects of the master rulebook. But when we cross the Atlantic and look at the United States, we find the exact opposite situation. I mean, if Europe is the FDA for crypto, the US is just a chaotic battlefield of competing agencies.
The contrast is honestly jarring. The US has no MiCA. There is no unified, comprehensive federal stablecoin law on the books. Like we said, if clarity is oxygen, the U.S. regulatory environment is a total vacuum right now.
Instead, our sources detail this wild phenomenon of regulation by enforcement.
Oh yeah, the alphabet soup.
The alphabet soup, exactly.
Yeah.
It's all these different agencies aggressively claiming jurisdiction over the exact same space. So you've got the SEC claiming stablecoins or investment contracts. Then you've got the CFTC arguing, no, they are commodities.
And then the OCC, the Federal Reserve, the Treasury Department.
Right. They are all stepping into the ring. And they aren't clarifying the rules ahead of time. They are enforcing their individual interpretations retroactively through lawsuits.
And the mechanism of that enforcement creates this really profound chilling effect. I mean, when an agency like the SEC sends a Wells notice to a crypto firm, which is basically a formal warning that they intend to sue them, that company is suddenly forced to divert millions of dollars away from research and development and just dump it into legal defense.
Just to survive.
Exactly. You have different entities applying totally different standards and judges in different jurisdictions handing down conflicting rulings on what a digital asset actually is.
Okay, but here's where it gets really interesting, and I want to challenge you on this a bit.
Yeah.
Because I struggle to see how the U.S. is genuinely losing here. Let me push back on this narrative of chaos being a pure negative.
Sure, go for it.
Because if you look at the actual market data, USDC and USDT, both of which are pegged to the US dollar, they absolutely dominate the global stablecoin market. I mean, they account for the vast majority of all stablecoin volume worldwide. So if Europe has all the clear rules and the US is this legal maze of different agencies suing people, isn't this regulatory vacuum actually a feature, not a bug?
Yes.
Well, does it allow the US to basically maintain total dollar hegemony globally without Congress actually having to pass any new laws that might tie their own hands?
Wow, okay. That is a highly sophisticated way to view the board. And honestly, the brilliance of the U.S. position, whether it's intentional or completely accidental, is that it relies entirely on the raw gravity of the underlying asset.
The dollar itself.
Exactly. USDC and USDT are effectively borderless digital extensions of the US dollar. And the undeniable truth of the global economy is that the world just desperately wants dollars.
So the demand for the asset just totally overrides the friction of the regulatory environment.
Absolutely. The global market is completely willing to tolerate the threat of SEC lawsuits or the lack of a unified federal framework simply to get access to 24/7 programmable dollars.
Because it's worth the headache.
Exactly. The U.S. doesn't necessarily need a perfect framework like Europe because the product they are indirectly exporting, dollar stability, is just so heavily demanded. especially in emerging markets experiencing hyperinflation or for cross-border settlements that bypass all those traditional correspondent banking fees.
So the U.S. is basically projecting monetary dominance through private companies. They're allowing the dollar to spread into every corner of the internet, while domestic agencies just trip over each other in court back home.
Pretty much.
That is a fascinating dichotomy. Europe leads with safety and structure, and the U.S. leads with the sheer brute force of dollar demand. But if you are a developer, or an institution, or even a competing nation, how do you even navigate that? You can't out-regulate Europe's fortress, and you certainly can't out-muscle the demand for the U.S. dollar.
Well, you don't. You don't try to beat them at their own games. You adapt. And this brings us to the third major player on this global chessboard, which is Asia. And what is vital to understand about Asia is that they have developed a highly pragmatic, hybrid model. They are actively observing all the friction in the US and the heavy restrictions in Europe, and they are capturing the capital that is fleeing both of those environments.
Yeah, our sources outline 3 very specific goals for the Asian region. They want to encourage innovation, control systemic risk, and compete aggressively on a global scale.
Yeah.
But unlike Europe, Asia is not a monolith at all. They aren't trying to force a MiCA-style blanket regulation over a dozen different sovereign nations.
No, they're acting as a massive geopolitical laboratory. It's like every country is testing a different hypothesis to see what wins. Different nations within the region are implementing totally different policies, effectively testing these hypotheses to see what captures the most global liquidity and institutional trust.
So let's dig into why these specific countries are making the choices they are, because the context really explains the mechanics of their policies. Take Japan, for instance. They have instituted rules where only traditional banks and trust companies are allowed to issue stablecoins. They're explicitly tying this new technology to legacy financial institutions, which feels very cautious.
Well, to understand Japan's approach, you really have to look at their history. Japan was the epicenter of some of the earliest and most devastating crypto exchange hacks in history, most notably Mt. Gox back in 2014, and then later CoinCheck.
Oh, wow. Yeah, those were massive.
Those events deeply scarred their regulatory psyche, so their priority now is absolute institutional trust. By restricting issuance to heavily capitalized legacy banks, they're ensuring that if a stablecoin fails, the traditional financial system is explicitly on the hook to make consumers whole.
Okay, so it's a very conservative, heavily insured approach.
Yeah.
But then you look at South Korea, and they are taking a completely different angle. They are in overdrive when it comes to consumer protection. They are strictly shielding retail participants from volatility, mandating intense disclosures, and heavily scrutinizing algorithmic stablecoins.
And again, the history dictates the policy there too. South Korea was basically ground zero for the collapse of the Terra Luna algorithmic stablecoin ecosystem in 2022.
Right, that was a disaster.
It wiped out tens of billions of dollars in retail wealth practically overnight. So their regulatory framework is a direct legislative reaction to that trauma. They are prioritizing the retail investor above all else.
Then we have Singapore, which is playing a completely different hand. They're taking a very explicitly pro-innovation stance with clear licensing frameworks. They really seem to be positioning themselves as the ultimate offshore hub for this technology.
Because Singapore recognizes that capital goes where it is treated best. They are offering the clarity that developers can't find in the US, but without the crushing capital requirements that MiCA demands in Europe.
The Goldilocks zone.
Yes, they want to be the agile middle ground where global crypto businesses headquarter themselves.
And we really can't talk about Asia without talking about the dynamic between mainland China and Hong Kong, because China has gone in the complete opposite direction by banning decentralized stablecoins entirely.
Right, a total ban.
Their focus is completely domestic, favoring a CBDC-first approach, a central bank digital currency. They want the digital money to be directly issued and tracked by the state, giving the central bank just granular control over monetary policy.
Yet, at the exact same time, you have Hong Kong, which obviously operates under Chinese sovereignty but maintains its own financial system, and they are building a highly structured, heavily regulated stablecoin regime designed to integrate with traditional finance.
So it's like a test environment.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, Hong Kong is acting as a controlled sandbox. It allows Chinese capital and state-affiliated institutions to experiment with global stablecoins and decentralized finance in a totally ring-fenced environment. So they get to play with the tech without importing the risks of those assets into mainland China's closed capital system.
The regional strategy is just brilliant when you zoom out. Asia is carefully threading the needle. by allowing different nations to specialize, like Singapore for agile innovation, Japan for banking integration, South Korea for retail safety, and Hong Kong as a controlled gateway. The region as a whole is positioning itself to offer whatever specific regulatory environment a global project might need.
And every single one of these choices, across all three major global regions, dictates how liquidity flows. Which actually brings us to the most critical part of this deep dive for you listening. Like, how does this multi-regional chess game actually impact the fundamental nature of money moving forward?
Right. To answer that, our sources point to a very specific historical comparison. The argument here is that stablecoins are transitioning into the quote-unquote new Eurodollars.
Yes.
Let's unpack the mechanics of that, because the Eurodollar system is one of the most important yet least understood pieces of global finance.
It really is. So historically, a Eurodollar is simply a US dollar held in a bank account outside the United States. The system originated during the Cold War in the 1950s.
Right.
The Soviet Union wanted to hold US dollars for international trade, but they obviously feared keeping them in American banks where the US government could just freeze or confiscate them. So they deposited those dollars in European banks.
Hence, Eurodollars. And it created this entire shadow banking system of US dollars circulating globally, completely outside the direct jurisdiction and reserve requirements of the US Federal Reserve.
Exactly.
It became the lifeblood of international trade because it was offshore, global, and highly liquid.
Now map that exact mechanism onto a stablecoin like USDT or USDC. A stablecoin is essentially a Eurodollar 2.0. It is a digital bearer asset pegged to the dollar, but circulating on decentralized blockchains.
So it moves instantly.
Instantly across the globe. It operates 24/7 without needing permission from a traditional banking hour or some localized clearinghouse. And it is largely outside the direct control of the central bank whose currency it mimics.
That makes regulation this incredible double-edged sword. Because the risks our sources outline are pretty severe. I mean, over-regulation could lead to a nightmare of fragmented global rules, where every single country demands a different technical standard for how a token operates.
And that leads to crushing compliance burdens.
Right. Effectively ensuring that only the massive legacy banks can even afford to participate in the future of money.
But the opportunity side of that coin is just as vast. Smart regulation is the only way to unlock true institutional adoption. It enables genuine global interoperability where, say, a smart contract in Singapore can seamlessly settle a transaction with a digital euro governed by MiCA.
Right, they can finally talk to each other safely.
Exactly. And most importantly, it creates the environment for regulatory arbitrage, where capital naturally fluidly moves to the jurisdictions that offer the optimal balance of freedom and systemic safety.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? The implication is that it's not just about one region outcompeting the others, the ultimate winners in this space, the entities that will define the next decade of finance. They won't just pick one board to play on. They will be the issuers and platforms that can successfully navigate all three of these competing philosophies simultaneously.
Yes. If you want to be a globally systemic player, you have to engineer your operations to be rigorously compliant enough to survive Europe's MiCA, but you also have to offer an asset that holds the global purchasing power to push through the US regulatory maze, and you must remain technologically agile enough to integrate into Asia's diverse, innovation-driven markets.
I mean, it sounds like an architectural nightmare. You're trying to speak three different legal and technical languages perfectly at the exact same time.
It is incredibly complex, but it is the reality of the board. The fantasy of a single global rulebook for digital money is totally over. The BIS, the IMF, the G20, I mean, they can issue all the recommendations they want, but we are moving toward a permanently multi-regional monetary map.
Defined entirely by those three competing pillars. Europe's fortress of structure, the US's reliance on raw asset dominance, and Asia's pragmatic laboratory of innovation.
And the friction, the regulatory arbitrage between those three pillars is exactly what is forging the future rails of the global economy right now.
So let's pull all this together and look at the whole board one last time. We started with the premise that regulation is the main event. It dictates the physics of digital money.
Right.
Europe is demanding transparency and preventing digital bank runs with MiCA. The US is projecting dollar hegemony through private tech companies, despite all these domestic turf wars between the SEC and CFTC. And Asia is capturing the capital flight by offering targeted jurisdictions tailored to specific institutional needs.
Exactly.
Together, these forces are literally shaping who gets to hold money, how fast it moves, and who gets to control the underlying infrastructure for the next century.
And as we close out today's analysis, there is a concept from the sources that perfectly frames the true scale of what we are witnessing. We discussed how stablecoins are becoming these new, unstoppable digital eurodollars.
Yeah.
Well, if these assets are truly becoming borderless digital extensions of national power, it poses a profound question for the future of sovereignty.
Meaning, what happens when the underlying technology overrides geography entirely?
Exactly. What happens to a nation's political and economic stability when a citizen decides they trust a foreign digital stablecoin sitting in a cryptographic wallet more than their own local currency sitting in a local bank? I mean, if the population just opts out of the sovereign money supply, who really controls that economy then?
Wow. A completely different kind of checkmate. It fundamentally rewrites what it means to be a central bank.
It really does.
Well, that gives us all a lot to think about. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive today. Keep an eye on how these three regions play their next moves, stay informed, and, as always, keep questioning the systems around you. Catch you next time.
1